sacrifices that Governor Corbett has made, and I'm proud that we walked that talk. If you take a look at recent history, Governor Corbett's the first governor out of 5 to walk away from the moral obligation to increase environmental protections. Governors Thornburg, Casey, Ridge, and Rendell all did something. When you take a look at Act 13, we need to repeal and replace this sort of disastrous approach of a local impact fee. The approach was unconstitutional. We must respect local municipalities' rights. It's one thing to have expertise about the how, but the where should be decided with full respect for local zoning laws and authorities.
Allyson Schwartz.
Rule that moving the microphone doesn't count. But good evening, and I'm very pleased to be here at this forum, and I want to say that it is such an extremely important issue that we're talking about in terms of protecting our environment, growing our economy, doing both. And the next governor is going to have a huge say about us doing this differently, doing this better. We have a failed governor, particularly in terms of the Marcellus Shale, has simply been giving our natural gas away to the energy companies. That's unacceptable. And as governor, I would institute a severance tax, 5% moderate, reasonable severance tax. I would have the best science to make sure that we have the best standards for drilling and for wastewater, and that we would enforce those as well. And I would make sure that we do not rely on natural gas as the answer, that we have to invest in alternative green, alternative fuels for Pennsylvania, and we should be able to make that.
Thank you. I believe in a balanced energy portfolio. That means we need everything that we can, including hydrogen and solar and wind and, yes, gas. But we have to do it right. Marcellus drilling has been around for 100 years. I don't understand why we don't have any regulations on fracking to date, but I think that we have to step up to the plate and make sure that that's done. We need our conservation districts back inspecting the fields. They're already out there anyhow for conservation plans on many of the farms, and they can call in the experts from DEP when they find something. I'm sorry, I don't understand your sign. 30 seconds, oh, thank you. Now I didn't get to read it. My apologies, first question. At any rate, I do support a 6% Marcellus shale tax, and I think that that is the average of all 30-some states that have a Marcellus shale tax. The energy companies are not going anywhere. We need to close the Delaware loophole, etc. Thank you.
Max Marks.
Though, as we've been addressing this, some of the commentary has been on taxation, and though I do support taxing the industry, it's been very evident that the natural gas industry really believes that they own Pennsylvania. And what I'm most concerned with is not the taxation, it's the pollution that fracking is causing. And I support a moratorium on fracking. The issues of our environment can only be turned around by stopping the fracking that's occurring and forcing the industry. The industry is not going to change their process unless we force them to change the process. And so a moratorium would cause them and force them to change the process. That would be the beginning point. The real question about it, is that doable? Is it doable for us to have a moratorium? It's one thing to have campaign rhetoric to say this is what I would support. It's another thing to really believe it's possible to do. I believe under my leadership it's possible to do, simply because we present the facts, we present the process. I really believe the Pennsylvanians will embrace what we're trying to accomplish.
John Hangers, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Good evening. On public lands, I wrote the moratorium on state forest drilling and would continue it. I have a plan to also keep it out of state parks and other parks, and there's a very real threat to drilling in parks. Drilling needs to be kept out of sensitive areas. So the quick answer to the question is that on private lands, the drilling must be strongly regulated, it must be zoned, and local governments, I urge them to, in fact, enact zoning, and it must be taxed. We also have to absolutely increase the number of inspectors, and we also have to make sure that we have a tight working relationship with the Attorney General, so that when there is criminal violations, there is criminal prosecution. Thank you.
think all of us are appalled by the approach the corporate administration has taken to this issue. We need to regulate the fracking, absolutely. We need transparency in understanding what chemicals are being used in the process. We need to eliminate the gag rule that are imposed on doctors. We need to make sure that the local municipalities have control over whether or not to do this, and we need to tax it so that if we are going to have any imperfections in this process, we are going to get some social utility from this, and more teachers, better bridges, better roads, and I think that's what we need to do. Thank you very much.
Ed Pawlowski.
Well, I think we're going to all agree on this particular issue, and I want to say ditto to all my colleagues. I mean, I would obviously tax Marcellus Shale and make sure we put a moratorium in public lands and make sure that we actually provide stricter regulations. And this is personal for me. As mayor, we had a major gas explosion in Allentown about 2 years ago. 6 people died as a result of that. And I saw that there's very little regulation on the state side. I have more regulation by water and sewer than we do for gas lines that are going through our communities, which is why I helped form the Mayor's Coalition, a national organization, a statewide organization for pipeline safety. So we need greater regulation. We need to make sure that we hold this industry accountable, and I will do that as governor.
Thank you. Katie McGinty.
Thank you very much, and it's great to be back in this wonderful facility. And as we start here, I just want to give a shout out posthumously to Dr. Ruth Patrick. We're privileged to be here today in part because of her pioneering work, allowing us to know what happens to the environment and the economy when we're not vigilant. I want to ascribe myself to all of the wonderful comments that have been made, but I want to go into the weeds in 2 ways. One, the crisis in West Virginia is proof positive that when the environmental cop is off the beat, disaster happens. In the Commonwealth, we have seen enforcement in the field fall by 50%. Now, at a time when industrial activity is going up rapidly, that's a recipe for disaster, and that is a recipe for failure on the environment and for those businesses that if and when that disaster happens, will certainly feel the pinch of the effects of that. We see that in the tragedy in West Virginia today, with countless businesses shut down, even as people have been deprived the most vital resource. Move forward with regulations, tax, and specific mandates to increase our renewable portfolio standard.
Thank you. I'm going to just cut right here and mention 2 other things. One, I'm going to ask the audience, even though I know you are committed to these issues and excited, to try and withhold your applause until the end. It will allow us to cover more ground. I'll also note that while you have done a great job of keeping